And welcome to the Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and occasional guests guide you through the world of online communications. And in true kind of traditional fashion, and to get a sense of who we are, we'll ask how the weather is where you are. So we have our special guest this week, who is Katy McNeil from Connecting Scotland. So Katy, how are you, and how's the weather been where you are this week?
Hi, Pauline. I'm in Aviemore in the middle of the Cairngorms, and the weather right now is stunning, very
Wow,
sunny.
great to hear. And Sweyn, how are you, and how's the weather where you are?
Well, it's nice to be not quite so far north of our guest as normal. In Orkney, the weather, I wouldn't say it's stunning, but it's very nice. We had up to the end of last weekend, we had proper snow, and the first time for ages and ages, first time for years. But this last 2 days, you can certainly feel spring is somewhere in the air somewhere.
Excellent. And here in Birmingham, I can see light out of the window, and we'll plan to go for a walk later on and do some shopping locally. So it is bright and not raining. So that's always a bonus. So we've got a few things that we're celebrating around this time. Sunday, 21st of February was International Mother Language Day, and this was announced by UNESCO in 1999, and it celebrates cultural diversity and commemorates the language martyr students of 1952 Bangladesh. And these students are honoured by the encouragement of multiculturalism and the promotion of protective measures for endangered languages. It's hard to imagine the challenges faced by students who have been ordered to learn in a foreign language, as without linguistic inclusion, there's no equal access to education. And current International Mother Language Day events include multicultural events which promote the hearing of all voices and display social cohesion, cultural awareness, and tolerance. And the unique nuances and subtleties of linguistic communication which connect individuals to culture and personal identity are valued and encouraged. And as Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart. And as someone who is currently brushing up on their Irish, learned at school on Duolingo, then I can speak to the feeling that comes when you're brushing up on your own language. Another
they say that the difference between a language and a dialect is having an army and a navy. But I don't quite know about that. But I think it's great that these days, unlike the time of our parents or grandparents, dialects such as Orcadian and languages such as Gaelic and Irish, Gaelic, are so much better encouraged and supported than they were.
Yeah, especially amongst young people, I think if they take it, then it's really going to succeed. Okay, so another celebration around this time is 22nd of February to 7th of March is Fair Trade Fortnight, and this is the British organisation that leads on this is fairtrade.org.uk. And this is for 2 weeks each year at the end of February and start of March. Thousands of individuals, companies and groups across the UK usually come together to share the stories of people who grow our food and drinks, mine our gold, and who grow the cotton in our clothes, people who are often exploited and underpaid. And in 2021, obviously, Fair Trade Fortnight will feel very different. It's been a hard year for everyone so far. We know that physically campaigning and meeting people will continue to be challenging. But in 2021, the Fair Trade Foundation did hear from people that they wanted to continue to support fair trade throughout this time. So in this fortnight, they're going to highlight the growing challenges that climate change brings to farmers and workers in the communities fair trade works with. The facts are straightforward. Farmers and workers in countries such as Kenya, Ethiopia, and Honduras, who have done the least to contribute to climate change, are disproportionately affected by it. And they've said that climate change is one of the biggest challenges right now, that low prices for their crops mean they're struggling to fight back, and that only with more money will they feel equipped to meet their everyday needs and deal with the challenges they face from climate change. So we hope that people pay attention to fair trade and do what they can to support people around the world who might be struggling. And then a couple of other things that we've noticed happening around this week. On Thursday, 25th of February, Leeds, another great initiative, they're doing an event on digital inclusion for older people, Leeds Older People's Forum and 100% Digital Leeds. They've recently launched a digital inclusion group with Leeds Neighbourhood Networks and organisations supporting older people to collaborate, share best practice and work together to support older people with digital inclusion. This has strengthened partnership working and is having such an invaluable impact in bridging the digital divide. So in this webinar, organisations from the group will be bringing together learning tools, resources and positive solutions to enable you and your organisation groups to support older people to overcome barriers to digital inclusion. So it's 100% digital Leeds Older People's Forum, Age UK Leeds, and Time to Shine are working in partnership to host the event. And I've signed up for that. It's only an hour, but I'm hoping to add it to the other great stuff that we're learning around digital inclusion for older people. And another event on the same day, so it might be a bit of a clash. Oh no, it's in the evening. This one, Digital Access National Network meetup. They met first of all in January this year, which was an event I was able to attend. And now they're having their second meeting, and this is facilitated by Janet from Restart Project, Mercedes of Merit, a company in London, and Digital Access West Yorkshire team. And as they acknowledge on their Eventbrite page, the digital inclusion problem isn't going away. And in fact, they've dealt with a massive wave of donations in the past month. So they'd like to discuss bottlenecks and challenges in dealing with this influx of donations, and also that daily new projects and initiatives are springing up to address the need. And they want to continue to catalyse a peer-to-peer network of DIY, local and national approaches to learn from each other, create an overview nationally of what, who and how, and amplify each other's initiatives. And the final link before we go to our special guest is John Popham, who established the Dr. Tech Show. His family have established a new Twitter account called Be More John to continue the legacy of John Popham around live streaming, social media and digital inclusion and sharing memories. And they've asked people to DM them to get more involved using the hashtag Be More John. And Sweyn and I talked to the family last week, and they're very keen to hear from people who might want to be involved, people who knew John, people who didn't know John, but like the things that he did. And it's well worth reading his blog, which is still up and worth dipping into. So that's our final post before we go to our special guest today, and I'll just introduce her. Katy McNeil is from Connecting Scotland. She's the Programme Director of Connecting Scotland, which is a digital directorate of the Scottish Government, managed by the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations. Previously with the Public Entrepreneur Lead at Civitech Scotland, Katy has more than 20 years public service experience working in civil service policy roles in delivery and programme management and as an improvement advisor. So Katy, you're very welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Hello. Thanks for asking me.
Great. So, Katy, we last met at UK GovCamp, where you ran a great session on digital inclusions, which I hope you'll be able to talk to us a bit about. But can we start with a bit about how you came to where you are? We like to hear from our guests about how they kind of came to be in digital inclusion, because it's not for everybody. What was your early career like? And tell us some highlights if you can.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a late comer to working in digital. So I actually have been in public service, as my short bio there says, for more than 20 years. I started out very much as a civil service policy person. I'd studied law at university. So all my sort of first postings were around what people would expect from civil service policy. So that is things like I was in criminal justice, you're dealing with legislation, you're answering parliamentary questions and doing things like that. Spent about 10 years doing roles like that. I then spent some time in the thing that's called private office, which is where you actually work directly with ministers, but in a non-political capacity, which is fantastic for giving you a really wide overview of how different public services work and how there's not just policy, there's delivery and there's public bodies and there's the private sector. So that really opened my eyes, I think, to a much wider view of what government is and does. And so after that, I moved slightly away from policy. I took a couple of secondments, worked much more in sort of direct, I suppose, public facing rather than policy facing roles, kind of ending up as a program manager and then moving closer into delivery, which ended up in digital with the Civitech Scotland program, which aims to match public sector problems with potentially innovative tech solutions. And my role there as public entrepreneur came because I did a entrepreneurial fellowship as well. So I've come into digital as a digital enthusiast for innovation, and with a background in trying to solve public sector problems. And the move to Connecting Scotland really came about entirely because of the pandemic, because there was a need to address digital inclusion. And and I was there and ready to take a move across and get started.
So was Connecting Scotland, was it going before the pandemic, or was it something that was set up in response to the pandemic?
Yeah, so it wasn't going before the pandemic. Right. So before then, there was a pre-existing partnership between the Scottish Government and the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations. There'd been a thing called the Digital Charter Fund running over a number of years preceding that. Doing small grants, doing really excellent digital inclusion projects, but probably mostly at a relatively, compared with Connecting Scotland, a relatively small scale.
Yeah. No, we should just make clear that we are talking about Connecting Scotland, which is a Scottish Government programme. So for viewers in Wales, Northern Ireland, and England, you have your own equivalents, but we're actually focusing today on the Scotland, the Scottish experience of this sort of reaction to the pandemic as it has turned out to be. Yeah. No, I've not asked you a question. You see, I would never get a job on the BBC. Pauline, you're on mute. Pauline, sorry. You're still on mute. Oh, that's a good one. Put Pauline's on mute. So we'll just talk among ourselves.
On mute. No, sorry, I'm here again. Yeah. I beg your pardon. So what's your kind of driving force around what you do, Katy? Have you got a public sector? Do you feel that that's your kind of call, or what's your driving ambition?
Yeah, it is absolutely a public sector. They got me when I was terribly young and nearly a child, and so I can't get away from being kind of driven by the public sector ethos. I think there is that idea that what you hope to do is you're hoping to make people's lives better in various ways, and I've certainly gone and tried various ways to do that. I'm really, ever since I kind of moved to digital, which I guess is about 3 or 4 years ago, I've just been really enthused about how that can bring together just like some different viewpoints. You can I think this is one of the places where you can see how policy and delivery come together, and that perhaps we've in the past those things maybe have been seen as being separate, but actually there's just so much potential to make really quite rapid progress, I think, in trying to make people's lives better once you get involved in digital government.
And what kind of things are you learning from the Scottish Council of Voluntary Organisations that have kind of made you stop and think, I didn't know that, or, that's something I need to think about?
Yeah, so I think we've been, it's probably worth saying Connecting Scotland is, it's kind of, I'm the person who coordinates things inside of Scottish Government, but it's absolutely, while it's got a government lead on it, it's a massive collaboration literally across the whole of Scotland. And so
what are Connecting Scotland's fundamental aims? What does it aim to do?
So I suppose the fundamental aim is to tackle digital exclusion and to bring people who have been digitally excluded by reason of low income or poverty, is to get them online, but to see that as not just being about giving someone a device or training someone up. It's actually a kind of holistic view. So it's the provision of a device, mostly a Chromebook or an iPad, some connectivity with a 4G MiFi, and then a bit of support from a digital champion and access to further support to get online and to start making the most of digital.
Yeah.
And have you come across things that have surprised you or made you stop and think a bit?
I think, oh gosh, just probably like just too many potential ways to take that. So I guess, I mean, because we started as a pandemic response, and it actually came from, it was a bit of a bottom-up movement. So it didn't start with Scottish Government saying, like, we need to set up Connecting Scotland. It started more with a kind of call to action, a bit of social movement building going on the internet, which then kind of led to a loose coalition, a kind of bunch of volunteers from across the public, the third sector, and also the private sector, to kind of bring a bit of structure around that. And that call to action, I think, went out first of all in the middle of March. By the time I got involved, I guess towards the end of April, there was kind of starting to be a bit of a program structure put around it. But there were about 50 people from all over those different sectors in Scotland kind of coming together on daily calls, trying to work out what could we do to tackle those who were, particularly those who were being asked to shield from COVID-19. Like, how could we just try and get them connected? And so it's almost like at that point it gets adopted by Scottish Government, and some of the access to funding opened up.
Yeah, because initially, if I recall, Connecting Scotland focused on those who were told to isolate themselves, and also either from the beginning or shortly afterwards on young people.
Yeah, so the initial, our sort of what we now call it phase one, because we're into like we're planning phase 3.
So it's been posthumously awarded the status of phase 1. Well done.
We didn't know. I mean, of course, at the
good.
time, we thought, and we launched it. It was launched on the 7th of May, and at the time, I mean, that may well have. I mean, our expectation was that actually this is Connecting Scotland, this first bit, but that was aiming to get up to 9,000 people who were most at risk from COVID online. So those who were extremely clinically vulnerable or clinically at risk from COVID, and that was our initial priority group. Thereafter, we've moved forwards, and phase 2, as it's now known, was launched in August, but is still out in its delivery phase at the moment, and that's been targeted at families with children and young people who have been in local authority care, so young people who are leaving the care system. And subsequently, at the end of November, we also went on to launch a winter, what was called the Winter Social Package, but it came with a whole raft of Scottish Government stuff around what might be needed to support people over the winter. And that we did a special round of Connecting Scotland, specifically targeted at older and disabled people who are at particular risk of social isolation over the winter. So that phase is also still currently in delivery, so we've kind of got two big bits of delivery going out and about right now. And yeah, we've completed the COVID one in 2020.
So do you see, I mean, this is possibly not a question for you, so apologies if it's not, but do you see Connecting Scotland as persisting beyond the pandemic in some way, or do you think that its focus on the response to the pandemic is what it's for, and it'll wind itself down at the end? Or how do you see it developing?
Yeah, well, I suppose the observation would be that, of course, the pandemic's like really changed what the way in which people talk about digital inclusion, and it's really changed the importance which people place on it. And I guess it's kind of gone from being a little bit niche to being of concern to absolutely everyone. So whether you're a citizen, whether you're trying to run a private business and you can't reach your customers now because some of them are being excluded, or whether you're a public servant, it's now really clear that it's in everybody's interest that we seek to include people as much as possible in digital. And so while I don't know, you can't say whether Connecting Scotland as the structure would remain. I think what's clear is that the agenda has completely shifted here. And in Scotland, we had a couple of weeks ago the report of the Social Renewal Advisory Board, which was a kind of group of people from Civic Scotland set up to look at what might need to change in Scotland after the pandemic. And one of their calls to action is that, you know, an incoming Scottish government, because we've got elections later this year, they've said an incoming Scottish government should make a commitment to tackle digital inclusion in the life of the next Parliament.
I think we've seen that with the other parts of the UK as well, and it's I think that it's becoming an essential. It's not a nice to have anymore. It's essential. Yeah. Would you say, Katie, that you've picked up any new tools or ways of doing things since the pandemic started digitally that you wouldn't have done before?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, on a really personal basis, I'm here in Aviemore. Now, I grew up in the north of Scotland, but for the last 30 years, I've lived in or just outside of Edinburgh. And I had thought that if I wanted to continue to have my career in Scottish government, then I would need to continue to be, you know, mostly based around the centre of Scotland. Since the pandemic started, I've been back up north, and I now think actually, so that's really changed now that I don't see that that I personally or that the sort of wider team around me will necessarily feel so constrained about, you know, where you have to live and work. So obviously huge strides in all the sort of using Teams, using Zoom, having to work out how to collaborate when you're not in person.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating time from that point of view. I mean, from my own selfish point of view, it's been in some cases, in some ways, absolutely brilliant that we've all started to work like this, and this kind of interaction that we're having now has come to be, for most people with an office-based job, just kind of routine and accepted. So I was actually going to ask you about that, because I had noticed that you were living in Aviemore, and I was wondering how that was working. So it's interesting to hear. From the point of view of somebody who's always been, as it were, looking in from the outside of the central belt, you know, how do we decide where to have a national meeting, typically of, you know, one from each council area? Well, we pick a meeting room somewhere within 90 minutes drive of Glasgow and Edinburgh, and we stick it there, and we hope that everybody will devote their entire day or an overnight stay even to actually getting there to take part. And the transformation, I mean, both in the digital office and the Scottish Government and all the big sort of central agencies in how things have been working has just been astonishing.
Yeah,
I think one thing I'd like to sort of keep, well, one thing that I keep banging on about is how are we going to actually reintegrate the room with 2 to 40 people in it into this type of conversation that we're having now between the three of us?
Yeah.
And can we keep some of this as we move out of lockdown? And I think that I think there's a real piece of work to be done there, or a lot of work to be done there to work out for what types of event or meeting or whatever we can do that, and for what types of event or meeting that's unrealistic. But I think for people like you now and me still in Kirkwall and in Aviemore, I think it's a really important question that we need to think about.
Yeah, and I think so. Some of the things I observed that actually Connecting Scotland, so we have a lead person in each local authority, so 32 local authorities in Scotland, all the way from Shetland and Orkney down to Dumfries and Galloway. And so actually really rapidly, once we'd sort of set up Connecting Scotland, you can get a representative of all 32 councils, and instead of having to look for what's the physical location we're going to do that, who's going to find a big enough room for everyone to get together.
Is anyone vegetarian or have dietary requirements?
Yeah. But instead, you know, we went to our colleagues at COSLA and at local government digital office, and you can convene and you can get everyone. So you can start, you know, weirdly for national digital inclusion effort, it's actually much faster to start doing that when you're all doing all the convening of working out how you're going to work together in the digital space, because you don't have to, you can cut through all those previously.
Certainly from our point of view, from my point of view, shall I say then, as an employee of a local authority, it's underscored again the different dimensions of digital inclusion that we need to look at. I mean, with the best will in the world, I think until the pandemic struck, I think whatever we've all said, we've mostly been looking at the percentage of homes who have a really, really fast internet connection. And now, that, I'm not wanting to downplay that as an issue at all, but there's always been at least two other issues. One is, does everybody have some bare minimum that works for them? That includes the facility to have 2 or 3 simultaneous Zoom or Teams connections, because everybody's working at home, including potentially learning at home. So there's that. But the other things, which is why it's been so amazing to see Connecting Scotland come into being and do so much, has indeed been, we talk about digital poverty. It's poverty that we're talking about in terms of being able to afford devices and being able to afford the data to connect those devices, even if you're in an area where theoretically you have lots of opportunity because you have ultra or mega or tera or whatever we're up to now, speed broadband. And it's been really interesting to see the focus just morph itself, and to see such good progress being made on some of those other things.
Yeah, and I think it's quite ironic.
We should say not just in Scotland, because there are equivalent or nearly equivalent initiatives in Wales and Northern Ireland, and even in England, so
and I mean, it's clear, like, the physical connectivity and infrastructure is really important, but when we've taught, there has probably been a tendency in pre-pandemic, you would talk about the percentage of houses which were connected, and it's like the reason to connect the house isn't because the house gets some big bonus, it's actually because that's where people are. So it's actually kind of flipping it to, but not to say, I mean, not clearly you needed to have the physical infrastructure in place before you can make such rapid progress. I mean, we have been distributing and working with mobile connectivity, really, because you don't then need, particularly if you think about the start where we're starting from in the pandemic and working with people particularly at risk of COVID, you weren't going to want to, even if it was possible, be putting extra people going into their house to put physical infrastructure in place. But it's I think it's shifted that a bit away from the physical infrastructure into the
so digital inclusion becomes less a negotiation with the likes of BT and more a policy and delivery question as to how you connect every individual. And I mean, I don't want to do down the importance of the sort of physical connection side of things, because the pandemic has shown this up locally to be a real issue. I mean, at some points in IT, we've been recommending that people who are not allowed to work in the office or are shielding or whatever, we've recommended that up to and including ridiculous things like working in your car near a community hall, which is a good connection. So I mean, we've worked through a lot of those issues now, but even for our own purposes as local authority service providers, we encounter the whole range of digital inclusion issues through how our staff access what they now need to do without coming into an office.
You ran a great session on at UK GovCamp, Katie, on digital inclusion. Were you pleased with the turnout and the what people said of that?
It was great, and actually what I really liked there was so I wanted to pose some of the questions, which is about how do we think about digital inclusion in the future. Connecting Scotland has been it's one model, and we've been it's been great. We've had the opportunity to make really rapid progress this year, and on target to connect. We'll have reached 55,000 folk by the end of this end of this year. But yeah, what I was really interested in is thinking about what other models are there and how might you kind of put stuff together to build on. I suppose when I think in terms of Scotland, it's like, how do we build on Connecting Scotland? For other places, it'll be how do we build on some of the great networks and ways in which people have come together. I think there's stuff there. We've mentioned houses and infrastructure. So for me, there's going to be bits about how do you make it so that more people have access to good quality, affordable broadband that fits their own personal circumstances, because and also how would we identify people who are currently digitally excluded, who could and should be included. And then there's, you go further into the actual inclusion and accessibility, because for some people, the way that some, that's why it's so important the websites and things are now designed in a very accessible way, or that we understand how different people might need to use devices differently according to their own user needs. So it feels like there's so much there and so much coming. And hopefully what we'll be able to kind of put into the system in due course is we're just gathering loads and loads of information. So it just at a pure basic level, because Connecting Scotland works in a way that we kind of allocate a number of devices at a local authority area. It's then up to the local public services and third sector organisations. They then apply to support their client groups. So what we now have, because we've run now 4 separate rounds of applications, so we now have almost 2,000 applications in which we have data where people have described the barriers that the group of people that we are working, these are the barriers they face, and this is what it means for their lives. So even just purely on the application data, we've now got this incredible resource of information about the scale of digital inclusion and how that's affecting people's lives. And we're now building that, kind of building up to the baseline survey of what are people's skills and experiences of digital when they come into Connecting Scotland. We've done a round of in-depth user and research interviews, almost 40 of them just before Christmas, with that customer group who were those at risk from COVID. And so all the time we're going to be just building like more and more information. So I think that's very exciting again for the future for anyone who's working in digital inclusion.
Absolutely, especially if that's transferable, if other nations can learn from that as well, because as Sweyn said earlier on the programme, we've certainly we've seen a lot of great things happening in Scotland, Connecting Scotland and other initiatives, and we think each nation has a lot to gain and share with each other.
Yeah, certainly we do have I was just going to put a pitch that we're planning our first publication in March, but we hope that would be the start, a sort of start of a program of research. But we'll just put out quite a short bit of just social research on our user interviews. But hopefully that will be the start of us being able to release.
We'll certainly look forward to.
Yes, please let us know so we can share it on the show. Yeah,
we will let you know. Yeah,
we like to gather those links.
I was just going to ask Katy, the concept of what digital exclusion is. I have had a sort of feeling that it's kind of changed. What it is has kind of changed as time goes by and keeps changing. Whereas before, we might have argued about, as you said, percentages of houses that are connected. Then we might have argued about percentage of people who've logged in a month to the internet, whatever that means. The more discussion we have on this program and otherwise, the more we understand that digital exclusion is a really complicated set of stuff. Some of which are barriers to do with income and access, but some of which are very much about how people live their lives now and what people want to do. Is there anything you can say about how the concept of digital exclusion and digital inclusion has changed over time, like as more and more things have become online only, or is that not the point, or what?
Oh, Gosh, there's a lot in that. So I think some of the things at which I guess I would start from some of the things which we're learning from our first bits of in-depth user research, which is that everyone's kind of on a journey with what they want to do and what they're comfortable with doing online. So the real common thing that we see that just about everybody does out of the box is it's about connecting with friends and family. It's about getting a kind of human to human contact by the means of technology.
What John Popper would have said, allowing people to have a natter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in fact, I can probably send over a link. We've got an absolutely wonderful short video of a woman called Rebecca, who's connected through the #1 befriending agency, who's having a chat with a couple of the folk from the befriending agency about the moment that her and her daughter were able to meet for the first time and see each other in a year. So that happens quite fast. People seem to get into it pretty quickly. Then where people want to go from there, it's really dependent on their own building skills and confidence, and also what interests them. But it also means when people are first being told, oh, wouldn't it be great, you should start to use public services. Well, it's no good if those public services online are really badly designed, or they don't take account of they're not accessible. It's not clear to someone who's not used, gone through an online form system, like the point of why they're doing it. So, I mean, I think there's another argument which says that if we want Connecting Scotland to get more people using digital public services, there has to be a feedback loop which involves making those digital public services as good and as accessible as they possibly can be, which I guess is probably why it seems odd beforehand to know that Connecting Scotland's run out of the office of the Chief Designer in Scottish Government. However, when you think about that all the way round feedback loop, I guess that's one of the reasons why it's really good that Connecting Scotland has run out of the office of the Chief Designer.
Absolutely.
Katy, I know you can't stay with us at the end of the show. We're really grateful you were able to spend this much time with us. If people do want to follow up with you or find you online, what's the best way to do that?
So the best place to find out about Connecting Scotland is just connecting.scot. To find out more about Scottish Government stuff is gov.scot. But people can find me on Twitter at KTMCNL. And also, worth following both. There's Digital Scots and DigiScot, and so if I get this the right way around, DigiScot is the SCVO digital online presence, and Digital Scots is the digital directorates. So that's the kind of set of folks around this in Scotland.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much.
I'm just sharing quickly on the gov.scot government website, which talks about, as it kind of looks to me, I haven't read it yet, but it looks to me kind of taking stock of Connecting Scotland so far.
Yeah, that was just published on Saturday for the World Day of Social Justice. So actually that's a blog published by the Cabinet Secretary for Communities in Scottish Government, Aileen Campbell, MSP, who we have to give a huge shout out for her ongoing and continued support and leadership on Connecting Scotland. But please do read the blog, and we'll be happy to hear from anyone who wants to find out more.
So it's on the Scottish Government website, and it's called Fairer Scotland is the article name, and it's written by Aileen Campbell.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Katy.
Great.
And please keep in touch with us.
We will do.
As we go forward.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Great. Yeah. Looks like some very interesting initiatives and progress.
I had forgotten that the programme is located within the government structure in the office of the Chief Designer. The Scottish Government's put a lot of effort into developing their own use of what they call a service design approach for Scotland. So they've taken the concepts of service design and they've promoted it around central government departments within Scotland and also local and other third sector partners. And there is quite a well-developed kind of overarching methodology for stuff to be designed. So actually, when Katy said that her program is within that, as she says, it makes perfect sense because we need to come together in all the different areas.
Definitely, yeah. As long as it's not the egos trying to claim, that they've done everything, then I think things can progress much more quickly. And I think it's only working together that we're going to succeed ultimately. Okay, so we've got a few other stories that we picked up along the week. Sweyn, are you ready to share?
I am.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one was the headline was low GP access rates among Latin Americans in the UK raise vaccine concerns, and I this is from the Guardian, and I got this one because one of the concerns for this story is that besides the fact that 1 in 7 low-paid Latin Americans are not registered with GPs, the digital access was a factor because 4 in 10 of the people surveyed for this report said they had no internet at home, and 15% had no devices. So digital exclusion is, might actively exclude a community from benefiting from vaccinations. There is no official data on Latin Americans in the UK, and it's not going to be an ethnicity option in the 2021 census, although Latin Americans can self-identify. But apparently there is an estimated 250,000 Latin Americans living in the UK, half of whom live in London, which would make them the 8th largest ethnic group in the capital. And as I say, the poor digital access compounds the problems they might be having. And a high proportion of Latin Americans not registered with a GP also raises questions about their potential exclusion from health programs. And this was a report by the Brixton charity Indo-American Refugee and Migrant Organization. So it's
a very interesting one.
Yeah.
Quite well. I mean, there must be other groups that are in a similar situation, and it's really good to have this highlighted that although we're all in the same storm, we're maybe not all in the same boat.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the next story was from Wales, balancing our Scottish content earlier in the programme. And this is a story where the headline is "Access to the Internet is a Human Right," as we kind of said earlier on as well. And this is from IWA Wales, the Welsh Government. And apparently the National Survey for Wales 2019-20 found that 10% of people in Wales do not use the internet, down from 23% in 2012-13, but falling far short, the article says, of where Wales needs to be to become a digitally inclusive nation. And like the previous story, it says what's even more concerning is that those who are most vulnerable to COVID-19 are also far more likely not to be internet users. And the proportion of people who do not use the internet rises to 48% for those aged 75 and older, and 18% for those 50 and older. And Public Health Wales reported 2/3 of people in Wales use digital technology to support their health in 2019. 87% of 16 to 29-year-olds reported using technology for this purpose, but this was just fell to 24% for those aged 70 and older. And other groups are also covered in this report. 19% of disabled people and 17% of social housing tenants, they say, are also digitally excluded. Now, action is being taken, which is making a difference. The Welsh Government is financing their own large-scale digital inclusion programme called Digital Communities Wales, Digital Confidence, Health and Wellbeing. So we do hope that there'll be some change in those figures, but it is concerning nonetheless.
There's an interesting, it's not quite relevant to what we're talking about today, but there's an interesting question in this article which says, and there's an article about it by the BBC apparently, in March, the BBC published an article asking the question, what if COVID-19 and the accompanying lockdowns had happened in 2005? And you hear people say, well, thank goodness for Teams, thank goodness for Zoom, thank goodness for, the the level of physical connectivity that there is. But I'm going to read that article and see what we think might have happened in 2005.
Yeah. It just reminds us that the internet was only around since the 90s, and we're still in very infancy. You've got the article up now. It's Rory Kessler Jones. Yeah.
We'll come back to that one another day.
Okay. Good to think
just
about.
Open it so I don't lose it.
Okay, we've got a few more stories. The West Midlands Coalition for Digital Inclusion has been launched just last week, in fact. And this is a coalition of 30 plus members representing the public and private sectors and voluntary community and faith organisations, formed as a result of the Digital Roadmap, which is the West Midlands Combined Authorities plan to give the region a digital reboot by tackling digital exclusion, reach net zero carbon by 2041 and support a post-COVID recovery.
Combined Authority, what does that mean?
The West Midlands Combined Authority is the regional network of local authorities and businesses and academia for West Midlands, and the regional mayor is Andy Street. So he launched this roadmap at Venture Fest, I think it's called, last week or a few weeks ago, which identified increasing access to digital opportunities for everyone as a key opportunity. Our stats are that currently 45% of people in the West Midlands are either using the internet infrequently or not at all, and the region has the highest proportion of employers, 38%, saying they find digital skills difficult to obtain from applicants of any UK region. So it's, like I said, I've been said previously, West Midlands is not doing as well as some of the other regions, which is a pity, and the Combined Authority are now starting to look at that particularly. And obviously the digital divide has been particularly highlighted by the pandemic. And earlier this month, as an example of something that's been happening, the Combined Authority donated around 150 old laptops and desktop computers to school children to help address digital poverty across the region. Yeah, so you've got the digital roadmap up on the screen now, Sweyn, which is a 32-page document looking at various parts of the region and things that need to be addressed. And on screen now is Carrie Lawler. Sorry, if you just scroll back down there.
Yes.
Carrie Lawler is a young entrepreneur. Youth for AI, she founded, was her one of the companies she founded. And she said she's seen firsthand how pivotal investing in and leveling up digital capabilities is for the region. She's on the Young Combined Authority board as well. She's the digital lead there, and she writes and speaks about digital inclusion and AI for young people. So she's a great person to have around.
Absolutely.
The region. We might have her on the show actually at some stage.
That would be a good plan. Yes, we need to ask her. I just thought I'd bring up the summary of the 5 missions looking forward for the 5 years, and there they are now on the screen.
Yeah, for 21-26. Now I'll read them out for our Hope Radio listeners.
Yes.
And they are securing access for everyone to digital opportunities, particularly those in poverty, sharing and using data to improve people's lives, becoming the UK's best connected region, realising the potential of digital transform our economy and build economic resilience, and using digital public services to build a fairer, greener, healthier region. I think we can all agree they're good ambitions to have.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how the partnership develops and how things move forward.
Well, they've got a meeting later this week of the Digital Inclusion Coalition, which is part of the roadmap, and I'm going to be attending that, so I'll hopefully be able to report back next week and say how that's going.
Great stuff.
And so the next item was BT Tech Tips. Now BT have been giving tech tips for a long time, but they have one of the people that's been gaining some notoriety or fame anyway on the media lately.
You might need your sunglasses for this website, but there we go.
Yeah, BT Tech Tips. So they have a series of videos and guides to help you learn about different technologies, from looking after your well-being to keeping safe online. And who do we see spot there, Sweyn? It's Jackie Weaver.
It's Jackie Weaver.
Yes.
So it is. I thought I recognised her. I'm not reading it properly.
Jackie, famous of Hanford Parish Council.
Good for her. She's grasping these opportunities with both hands to to never waste a crisis, as they always say in emergency.
Well, I think she's made good
she's been
use
a
of
very
that.
good example
Yes.
for that. Yes.
So this is a 2.5-minute, 3-minute video, I think, about making virtual meetings productive. And I listened to it last night, and it's kind of some of the standard stuff you'd expect. Having an agenda, giving people time to respond, using the waiting room efficiently, to let people in, little people in and out, and just having a bit of respect, which I think is one of our watchwords. Sort of making sure everybody gets a chance to participate.
No, I'm just looking here. There's a whole list of different short videos by people like David Walliams, Ryland Clark Neal, Fern Cotton, Angelica Bell, etc., etc. So it's a really nice website address as well. It's bt.com/tech-tips.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
nice website name.
I thought it was good to have
credit
people,
where credit's due.
I thought it was good to have people that people would recognize, from
Yes.
TV and radio. So if you scroll down again,
sure.
So they're all on the screen, Sweyn. So as Sweyn has said, David Walliams, Ryland Carter Neal, Fern Cotton, Marvin and Rochelle. I'm not sure who they are. I don't know them. And then there's like 9 videos on the screen. 12 now. Gareth Southgate is one.
And more. There's loads.
Claire Balding is another person. And bottom
Gareth
left,
Southgate.
Reggie
Some people
Yates.
in England know who he is.
I think it's good to have short videos about the things that people want to be doing. There's
Peter Jones from Dragon's Den, protecting your business online.
Very,
That's really
very
great.
effective. Gareth Southgate is there about keeping fit. Using WhatsApp to do video calling from Claire Balding, and also working from home. Taking your business online was Jake Humphrey, and Reggie Yates, keeping yourself entertained. All the kind of things that, so it's not, we don't always have to use technology for business. It can be for just relaxing and enjoying, doing what we can to enjoy ourselves when we can't see our friends and families.
And there's a program of webinars there as well, I see, which people can join in. Who knows? I might register for one of those.
And learning to code a cake in our robot bakery. Apparently children love that one.
Means.
Yeah.
Visit our robot bakery to have a go at coding a cake. Why not?
Yeah, sounds good.
No,
and the last one there
was
exploring more suits for tomorrow. Yeah, nice to find these, as I say, short videos. So just not too taxing, but give you some useful information that might be helpful. And then the final story in our roundup for this week is digital exclusion in mental health service users. And this was a tweet I saw about somebody who, a company called By Your Side, which is helping people to cope with their mental health. And in the tweet, the content says that a man they came across a man who's had a PC for 5 years and emails and Facebook use daily, but he has never saved a document on his laptop because in quotes, it is connected to the internet and therefore anybody could read it. And the tweets go on to say, natural to assume that if you can see all that stuff out there, they can equally see you. So the kind of the learning is when we're working with neurodiverse people, it's wrong to think we can understand and anticipate all the barriers to digital fluency. Also recognize that not everyone has the type of wetware to learn these skills and repeat them without ongoing guided support. And I think that's the main message we'd want to convey, that one lesson, it's like going to the gym. Just because you go to the gym once doesn't mean that you've you're fit and you're healthy and you can
just because you've done the induction at the gym doesn't mean you're fit. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the concept of championing and support, rather than as well as training where necessary, really comes into its own here, the importance of it.
Definitely. So if you look on the to the right hand side of that screen on Twitter, Side by Side Network is a service user involvement and co-production network running the fine line. Running the fine line between genius and insanity, service user led, and then they do a newsletter, which they give a link to there as well. So I think they're Camden and Islington based, but obviously online you can use some, take advantage of their
learning
tools. Yeah. Yeah. And they've got some stuff on SoundCloud and so on. Yeah, I think it's a good point, well made, about needing help, ongoing help. And as we were talking to John Popham's family last week about trying to have some ongoing support for people, and John wrote in his blog about getting organizations to tell the stories, because it's not just about telling the stories, it's about the choices that it gives people when they read about how other people are doing things, and it counters the fake news and the misinformation that other people are putting up there. I've got a one from I've got John's blog here in front of me on my phone. I just want to read this bit out because it's important to hear about what's happening and why it happens. And I'll read from the top. Telling stories about the good works people do is extremely important, and yet it's not happening to any great extent in these sectors. And this was the voluntary community sectors. And this was written, before COVID, but I think it still pertains. And John said, it was important because it educates people as to what their taxes and donations are being spent on. It sheds lights on good works and helps others learn from them. It helps participants develop greater understanding of their work and make connections with others doing similar things. And it provides context for people to develop new or changing opinions. So I think that's a very clear, kind of explanation of, why we're doing these programs, and hopefully encourage people to do more sharing online. And John went on to say the organizations that people trust are those that they know and have ongoing relationships with. And this further applies to individuals. The way they develop these relationships is by connecting with their stories. When he was alive, John helped people tell their stories through online video and other forms of social media. And everywhere, he acknowledged, every day, there are people and organizations doing great work whose stories never see the light of day. And then this leaves the way open for the media to distort people's perceptions through TV programs such as Benefit Street and the like. And people and organizations telling their stories is thus vital to counter this picture. And to conclude, John wrote on this blog, I believe we all have a duty to try to make the world a better place. That's what he was trying to do. As he said, he loves the internet and all kinds of new technologies, and he's amazed by their potential to improve people's. And I hope we are doing a bit of that.
Absolutely. I was
encouraging others as well.
I was trying to find that blog post on John's blog, which is johnpopham.com. But there's so much good stuff there. A, I kept getting distracted by the other articles, and B, I can't find it anyway. So everything on there is worth a look. So just go to johnpopham.com and browse, because there's all sorts of good stuff, as well as some quite sad stuff about his cancer journey.
Yeah. I mean, we hope that we continue to bring people, news and interesting things that they can follow up, and to work with other people to end digital exclusion, or at least to see it decrease, and help people to have a more full and fulfilling life using the wonders of the internet.
And if anyone has questions for us, or would like to volunteer to be a guest, or would like us to say something, you can contact us on drtechshow@gmail.com. It's Dr. Tech Show, all spelled out, all one word.
Or follow us on Twitter, or use the usual channels. And I think that's probably the end of the show for today, Sweyn.
Yes, and this is where I desperately search for the closing credits and hope to play them without too much delay.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you all next week, hopefully. Stay safe and have a great week.
Have a great week indeed.